Hello everyone, my name is Krishna and I'm partnering with my peer Anvita for this session. Today, we're going to discuss about Office downloads, activation and few troubleshooting scenarios on same. This session encompasses of Office as a client protocol, covering a broad spectrum of how it intercepts with layers of authentication, OS, network, prerequisites and isolation of different scenarios. We'll also see few troubleshooting steps based on cases for Office installation, activation, sign-in, updates and other relevant information and logs to be collected. Let's get started.
The topics we would be covering today: a brief overview of Office flavors and versions, different modes of installation, and how to utilize Office customization tool to create configuration XML files per business needs, the basic concept behind activation, prerequisites, use cases, like which depicts the approach and multiple scenarios based troubleshooting and isolation for sign-in issues, and so on. Please note this session is being recorded. To start with the agenda today, let us see two Office installation technologies. MSI and C2R are the two common installation technologies used to install Office. So you can also get Office installed from Microsoft Store, the other way to install Office. Now click to run. Click to run uses Microsoft virtualization and streaming technologies. It can also be pushed via SCCM and applies to all subscription-based Office products and few perpetual versions. Example, Microsoft Apps for Enterprise, which was formerly known as Office 365 Pro Plus, and other perpetual versions like Office 2019, etc. It can be customized using Office customization tool. And the main advantage over MSI is that Office applications are ready to use while the setup is running behind. Now that makes it a good approach to start installing with C2R based versions of Office. Coming to MSI, it is a traditional installation technology that most of us would have come across before, now which typically comes when you purchase Microsoft Office through volume licensing. Example, Office Professional or standard versions that we have seen so far. Now, it can be pushed via SCCM as well, and it applies to perpetual versions of Office. To know which installation technology is used, the user can go to File, Office Account, and then click About Outlook. And you'll see the product information in any Office apps like Outlook, Excel, Word, etc. And another tip to quickly identify the installation technology used is that in MSI versions, there is no such option named Office Updates. So you can see that on the screenshot here. The screenshot on the left side shows the C2R version, the Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise that comes with any of the Office subscription that a user purchase. And you can see the Office updates, the highlighted option which is available and which is not available on the screenshot that is to the right, which is basically an MSI based installation. Okay, so let's move to the next slide, which talks about the Office versions. So here are two examples of perpetual and subscription based Office clients. So Microsoft 365 apps, which is formerly called Office 365 Pro Plus. It's a subscription-based client that ensures you always have the most up-to-date modern productivity tools from Microsoft. With a subscription, you always have the latest features, fixes, and security updates. Now, if this can be installed on all the devices and sign into, like, the user can sign into 5 different devices at the same time. And it is also to note that Microsoft 365 apps need connection to internet at least every 30 days to avoid applications getting into reduced functionality mode. Now, just to give an overview of reduced functionality mode, the users can only view, print their documents, and some of the other features like editing or creating a new documents are disabled in reduced functionality mode. And this can be avoided when the user has internet connection, and just by simply reconnecting to internet and just signing into the Microsoft 365 account. Now, coming to Office 2019. So we have put 2019 here because 2019 is the latest version of perpetual version of Office client. So Office 2019 is a perpetual client sold as a one-time purchase from Microsoft, which basically means you pay a single upfront cost to get Office apps on one computer. Whereas C2R gives you option of 5 devices. Now, one-time purchases are available for both PCs and Macs, but however, there are no upgrade options, which means if you plan to upgrade to the next major release, we'll have to buy it separately. So security updates are still included with Office 2019 or any perpetual version based on their support lifecycle, but user won't get any new features as you get on C2R versions of Office clients. So upgrades to major releases are also are not included with perpetual versions. So to move before we move on, so the scenario we covered today will focus mainly on Microsoft 365 apps than the perpetual apps. Okay, so the next slide talks about the support lifecycle for Office for Mac. So because we see there are certain environments still having Office 2016 for Mac, and we get cases on those. So we just want to update on this part that it is good time or it is required to move on to Office 2019 for Mac or Microsoft 365 for apps for Mac to be on the supported lifecycle. So the slide talks about some of the details on the lifecycle and the end of support from Microsoft. So we will share you some of the resources at the end of this delivery, and you can go through it later. Good. So next we'll move on to Office installation. So so these are the common installation methods used for Office. We can make users install Office on their client devices directly from the portal. So that is portal.office.com, and you can go to install Office, which will take to the user's account, and the user can self-install Office directly from there. So this method gives less control over deployment, but that is less administrative overhead needed. So this would be good for users if you feel the users can install the Office by themselves on their PCs. Known as Office deployment tool. So the Office deployment tool, a command line tool that can be used to download and deploy Microsoft 365 apps to the client computers. So deploying Office from the cloud, which is CDN, which is basically the content delivery network. So the deploying it from there will minimize the task needed for the administrators. However, if the network capacity doesn't allow Office to be installed from the cloud, then then Office can be deployed with ODT from a local source as well. So we will go through some of the configurations in the upcoming slides of how to make that possible. And continuing, ODT, which is Office Deployment Tool, can be used as a standalone tool, or it can be used with any third-party software deployment tools that that if an existing environment has to distribute and manage software. Next, this can also be does a network deployment or a GPU-based deployment as well. And the SCCM, so talking about SCCM, or or recently it's called as Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. The configuration manager basically scales for large environments. It enables extensive control over installation, updates, and settings, especially when it comes to Office. And the last option would be Intune based installation. So Intune can also be used in Office deployment to MDM managed devices. You have a policy or you have a template to do it easily with respect to Office. So moving on to next slide is Office customization tool. So OCT, which is Office customization tool, plays a vital role in Office deployment workflow. This web tool can be accessed from config.office.com, which creates the configuration files that are used to deploy Office in larger organizations. Now, we will walk you through the customization tool and how we can leverage to create the XML file with customized deployment settings. Now, these configuration files give you more control over an Office installation. Like we can define which applications and languages are installed, or how those applications should be updated, and some of the other application preferences that normally a larger organization or any organization would be in need. Now, in this shown section on the screenshot, you see the architecture and the products that need to be deployed must be chosen. The first highlighted box shows the architecture, the bitness of 32-bit or 64-bit. Sorry, and so 64-bit will be the default one unless it is changed here or even installed from the portal. And the second option under product section talks about the Office suites. So you have different flavors of like Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise, business, and you can also use this customization tool for the deployment of perpetual versions. So you can see Office Professional Plus 2019 volume license base. Now, so the enterprise and business can be chosen based on the license assigned to the users on the organization. Okay, so the next part of this tool. So here, we can choose the products that need to be installed along with the Office suite. So please note that in many cases we can install Office, Project, Visio on the same computer, but there are some combinations that can't be installed together on the same computer. So the reason we highlight this point is that we get some of the scenarios where Office installation fail, and upon checking we'll come to a conclusion, or we'll be identifying that there are some versions of Visio project that is being installed which is incompatible to be installed on the same machine. So we'll share you the details on the supported scenarios for installing different versions of Office project and Visio on the same computer. So here you can also choose the language pack and the language pack that can be added additionally along with this installation. So the next would be the update channel. So update channel, like it determines how frequently the user client devices are updated with new features. Now there are multiple factors that will determine which update channel need to be selected for deployment of Microsoft 365 apps. And I would say like network bandwidth, utilization, and other organizational requirements like space, the resources, the storage space available, and other resources available. And the first highlighted text box shows some of the update channels that are currently available with Microsoft apps for apps 365 apps. So the current channel will be the latest, as it provides the users with newest Office features as soon as they are ready. So this can be, you can select the pilot of users to deploy the current channel, or the most common would be semi-annual enterprise channel, which will be a 6 months once release. So Anvita will be talking more brief on it at the end of the session. And also please note that group policy and ODT are the only supported method to change update channels. So there are some scenarios where we would be in need to change the supported channels, the update channels, because some of the applications are the add-ins that the organization use might not be supported on the current channel, and you might want to backport to the monthly channel or the semi-annual enterprise channel, which is the last stable version of release for Office. So, so please be aware of that. And the app sections here at the down defines which Microsoft 365 apps product should not be installed. So you can see OneDrive and is turned off. So the apps turned off here won't get installed when you use this XML file for the deployment of Office. Okay. So here we have an option to include multiple languages and can use so there is a attribute name match operating system attribute that helps to automatically install the same languages that are in use on the client device, like the language that you have it on your operating system, the default primary language installed along with Office. uh, so I just want to let know that this is not mandatory that this XML has to be generated from here, but it is an easy tool or recommended tool to generate. But you also have certain other attributes and elements that can be added manually if you're proficient with XML customization. So some of the attributes that like match operating system that I said is the attributes like you can see when the XML is getting exported as a file. So we will share that as well for your reference in future. What are the supported attributes that can be added to XML? It's something like what you have the parameters in PowerShell in Exchange Online or SharePoint Online, which cannot be found in UI. Okay. So and yeah, the highlighted proofing tools. So what proofing tools is that? So we would have come across some of the grammatical mistakes that Word can help, or any Office application can help us to autocorrect. And if the user, is business needs to use a different language and just want a that language to be used for proofing purposes, for autocorrection and other thing for dictionary, that languages can be added here as a proofing tool. Okay, so next slide would be on the installation options. So the installation options. So this section, like, it allows to choose whether Office files directly can be installed files directly from the cloud or from a local source on the network. So as discussed earlier, this can be chosen based on various requirements and resources availability. So these are the different methods that you could opt in from this tool. And the other options that you see are like, pin icons to taskbar, so installation to user, so that as I said, C2R, or like the apps uses streaming technology. The installation happens in behind and users can start to use Office on the go. But you can still show the installation to the user if it is required, and you can also pin all the icons by default to the taskbar, like all Word, Excel, and all of his applications icons will be pinned to taskbar by default. Good. So this upgrade options, like what we see here, basically it removes any existing Office Visio and a project that were installed using Windows installer MSI from the computer prior to the installation of Microsoft 365 apps. So so the option highlighted here, just enabling it ensures it removes the non-essential MSI versions on the machine, basically all MSI versions of Office installed on the machine. So you could also opt in to remove Visio and project along with this deployment. So so it is highly important to note that before installing Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise or business, we highly recommend removing any existing MSI versions of Office on that PC, because both installation technology are not, on most it's supported to be running on same PC. Okay, so the next would be on product key. So basically, the product key section helps deploying a volume license version of Office. The option that you see here, the volume activation, like provides two different models: key management service (KMS), and so which is like a very vast used one option to activate Windows and other clients. Now it allows organization to activate systems within their own network, and the other option of multiple activation key MAK, it's a one-time basis, like it uses using the Microsoft shared services or the activation services. In our case, it is we focus on Microsoft 365 apps, and it is not a volume license version, and it does not require KMS or Mac activation. So what is then what? How is Microsoft 365 apps get activated? So we have the highlighted option. So you see the highlighted check box there, which shows user based and shared computer. So these are the two common methods of activation of Office. Now the user base is the default licensing mode for Microsoft 365 apps. So in this mode, the license is carried within the user's profile. So user-based licensing requires an user-level activation, and it requires user to sign into their Azure Active Directory account. So it's basically it attached to one user who has an Azure Active Directory account. Now, if the organization, let's say the organization has a virtual desktop infrastructure like VDI implementation, or have users that share workstations connecting to RDS servers like terminal servers, then shared computer activation can be enabled for those devices when you deploy Microsoft 365 apps. So this mode is typically used in scenarios with multiple license users connecting to the same devices. So we come across multiple organizations where users have to connect to an RDS. They connect from the same PC, but still they want their own Office experience and configs to work. So this can be achieved using shared computer activation, and shared computer activation has certain customization to be done, and we will see that on the upcoming slides, which Anvita would be highlighting on some of the best practices to do so. And the next would be the application preferences. So in this section, you can choose what preferences to apply when deploying Office. So we can define application preferences for supported products, like you can see the default file locations, or the default file format, etc. And more details of the settings can be learned by clicking the appropriate setting, and the details will be shown on the portal itself. So the next would be the sample config XML file. So this XML file is a sample from the Office customization tool, the OCG tool. So you have an option to import and export. So we have exported the customization, what we have seen on the previous slides, and so these are the some of the common values. So we can now use this configuration file with the Office deployment tool or another software distribution solution. Now, the deployment tool is run from the command line, as we have discussed before, and it uses this configuration file to determine what settings to apply when deploying Office. Like the highlighted box like you can see the shared computer licensing. So this is one of the settings, so or the property that tells if SCA is enabled. SCA shared computer activation is to be enabled. So SCL cache override is also related to the same. So once Office is, once the deployment tool uses this configuration, it knows whether it need to enable shared computer licensing. So it's nothing but, for example, if this is set to 1, you would see a registry key enabled on Office registry Hive. Click to run Microsoft software, Microsoft Office 16, and click to run. So that Hive will have a shared computer licensing set to 1, and the cache override is another value that tells the storage space for the licensing token files. And yeah, others you see as pins, icons, or taskbar, which you have seen before. And the auto activate, so just to highlight on that, because we have seen some of the cases recently. So Microsoft 365 apps is set to activate automatically, right? And this auto activate property is not needed and to be set for Microsoft 365 apps product. So basically it is needed for the perpetual versions like 2019, and it is not required because the M365 apps are set to be automatically activated by default. And yes, so you see the device-based licensing. So this is another licensing method, which is like it's a new licensing model. So we'll just give an overview of like how is it like this licensing model will apply to the machines and have no link to user like whatsoever. In a sense, it's like a volume license with subscription features. So currently the license is Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise device, and is available only through enterprise agreement or enterprise agreement subscription EAS. For education customers, it was introduced with education customers, and the license is Microsoft 365 apps for education device, and that is also available only through the enrollment for education solutions EES. Uh, that's about it. And if you see on the right, so we have the steps to deploy using Office deployment. So you have to download the Office deployment tool from the link highlighted, and you can create a folder, any folder. Like let's take its ODT, and you save the config.xml file that we have exported from the Office customization tool, OC tool, OCT tool, config.office.com, and then open the elevated command prompt as like command prompt administrator, navigate to the ODT folder that we have created and which has the config file, and start running the commands below. So the first command, setup.exe/download configuration.xml, will actually download the Office bits. Now the config.xml, so let's take you have this file on a shared folder. We need to ensure that the setup.exe path and the configuration.xml path, the actual path, should have the full UNC path of that shared folder and the file in it. And the next command, like setup.exe/configure.configuration.xml, will actually begin the installation of Office based on the settings what you see on the left screenshot to the left. And one like tips to note is that like once the downloading starts, the easiest way to know that identify that if the download has already started, you could go to the same folder, the source folder, and you will find a folder named Office. And if you click on it, you would see the Office bits getting downloaded to that folder. So that's one easiest way to identify that the Office has been downloaded, because this is just a command line tool and doesn't tells you if it is directly being downloaded. Just you would see just a blink on the screen unless the command completes. Good. So the next option would be troubleshooting Office installation issues. The first thing we would recommend to understand the customer environment. As you have seen before, there are certain multiple environments, like this could be a user-based activation, or a shared computer activation wherein the Office is installed on remote desktop servers like hosted services, and the customer might have uh, the other tools like FS Logic. So FS Logic is basically a profile management uh, tool. So we have to check some of those things that like if the Office is installed or deployed in such an environment. And the second thing would be the isolation based on domain join versus non-domain join. We will be sharing a little more about this on the upcoming scenarios. And the modes of installation, the very common issue that comes is like or a very basic thing that we miss, that's some of the issues that missed out is C2R and MSI. So we will see a tool in the next slide which will help us to identify if we have any other versions of Office installed on that machine, and we could identify if those are compatible to be installed on that on the same PC. And the next would be user specific isolation, like permission issues. For example, let's say that you allow the users to install it themselves. The user should have at least a read permission over the folders that have the Office bits downloaded. So this is very rare scenario, but it's good where the users would deploy, but it is good to know. And yeah, this previous instance is same what we discussed. We'll see on the next slide about ROI scan. And antivirus filtering software on machines. So that would also be one of the cause where it would stop you from installing or activating Office. So there are certain URLs that need to be allowed. If we have allowed all the Office 365 URLs and IP addresses recommended by Microsoft, we are well and good to go. But there are certain specific activation URLs that also need to be allowed on your proxy servers or firewall. Um, on any filtering services that comes in between the Office activation service and the client. And check for Office bitness is 64-bit or 32-bit. That would sometimes cause issues. It would be clearly shown on the error code. And yeah, then again the same on MSAS's C2R compatibility. We highlight this because these are the most common things that comes with when it comes to the compatibility issues. Okay, so there are certain other narrowed points that would help us to narrow down the issue, and we will cover up some of the scenarios, and that would give us, more light on those steps to isolate this issue. So the next would be ROI scan. So the ROI scan is basically it's a robust Office inventory scan, and it is a VB script which performs the environmental checks on the machine where Office is installed. You just have, the user have to just double click on it. It executes the script and provides a result in the notepad file. So what we see on ROI scan is so basically the script assists the installed Office configuration on the computer that we executed. So we'll get the details like shown in the screenshot. So you see the computer name, and you see the OS detail, like what version or the build number of OS, and the languages that is installed along with OS that comes, like what we discussed before, our match operating system. So if it comes to a language pack issue, and the logged in user, and it also contains some of the product details, so like what version of the product is installed on that machine. So if you see the next slide, you will see some of the details of CDN based URL and the update to version. So these are the seeds. So this machine had a CDN based deployment of Office. So this gets installed directly from Office Cloud. It doesn't have any local source path to get the Office bits to be installed. And you also have updates link. So this is one way to find if the CDN is what the office on that machine is looking for updates and features. So yeah, this is some of the details that you could see on registry Hive as well. So you could go to the user Hive, so Microsoft Office 16, and click to run, and you will see the same details which would cover most of the details that you have customized on Office customization tool, like what version to be installed, like what channel is being configured on this machine, and some of the other settings that we have given from Office customization tool. Okay, and the next would be ULS Verbose logging. So when we troubleshoot Office issues, like traditional log settings sometimes don't collect enough information. So when we come across certain environments that has a complex deployment, it makes it difficult to troubleshoot with the default logging. And that's when the ULS verbose logging that would help. So you have a default logging enabled, but still it is not verbose enabled. So these logging might include, this might help in like certain sign-in issues, like installation and update issues, etc. So to collect more verbose logging details, these registry keys must be added. So you see the log level, the first registry key, and you have to run it as command prompt as administrator on the machine which is affected. And the first two registry keys will help us to enable the verbose logging. And you could begin the installation process, or you can basically we have to reproduce the issue, and the logs will be captured. Now, so the logs once captured can be copied from temp folder, the bin directory, the system directory temp folder, or the user temp folder, the local app data temp folder. And so how to collect or how to identify the log file is by the file name. So the format of the file name would be machine name hyphen date hyphen time dot log. So you can see the example here, like PC name. Let's say you have a PC name is my PC1, and then you have the date and time, and followed by time, and you have a dot log extension added to it. So that's how because this is one of the logs we get more often when it comes to Office installation, activation, or sign-in issues. So we just want to stress on this slide and to how to enable or be aware of this log that Microsoft support would need to proceed on any complex environment. So, and other thing is that it is we recommend to disable the verbose logging post troubleshooting. We can use the command shown here at the end to delete the registry key. You see the reg delete command, or you could also manually disable it to avoid it taking the excess storage space when it is keep turned on. Okay, so good. Now I'll hand it over to Anvita, who will help us with some of the best practices, troubleshooting and isolation tips on various Office installation, activation, and sign-in scenarios that we most commonly come across. Thanks, and Anvita, you can proceed.
Thank you, Krishna. Thanks for walking us through the flavors of Office and about ODT and troubleshooting installation issues, and helping us with the isolation steps. The reason we want to stress on the best practices is because we know that Microsoft partners do not just work on the support incidents, but they are also customer advisors, and they also help the customers with deployment. So we have curated some of the scenarios based on the top call generators, and we have identified some of the issues where customers face issues, and how we can mitigate those. So some of the best practices here would be that if you are helping the customers with deployment, and they might have had a previous product of Office, either Click to Run or MSI, then it would be good to ensure that even if they have deleted it, it would be good to ensure that you double check it before deployment in order to avoid any challenges that might occur later. And one of the best ways to do that would be, there is a publicly available script called offscrub. We'll share those details as well with you. And you can run those scripts on the machines so that any previous instances of Office has been removed from that machine. Because if there are any instances of previous versions already present, then it might not cause issues directly while deployment, but it might cause issues later after activating Office, and they might see some of these errors popping up when they are using the Office product. Okay. So running through some of these scenarios which most of the customers get, and the first scenario here would be Office installation stops at 56%. So this is again a generic error, and it necessarily does not have to be 56. It could be at any given point during the course of installation, and you will be able to see that it stops at a specific percentage. So since it's a generic error, and Krishna already stressed on the fact that Office being a client-based product, there is a lot of impact based on the customer's environment. So understanding the customer's environment plays a pivotal role here. So first thing would be to isolate based on what kind of environment they have. And second of all, especially for installation issues, we need to check that click to run service is running in the background, because as soon as you start installation, the service that starts running is the click to run service, and you'll be able to see it. So you can go and check in the service section if this service is running. And one of the common things we check is we go to the task manager and check if there are any other long running processes which are running in parallel. And if it is not important, you can pause it so that installation takes precedence, and then observe the behavior. And checking from network standpoint would be a good thing to start with, because there could be a possibility that there could be some specific component of Office installation file that is not recognized by filtering devices like antivirus, firewall, etc. And that specific component of file could be blocked by these devices. So as isolation steps, we can try to disable it, sorry, you don't have to disable it. You can just pause it and try to continue the process. And we can perform a clean boot on the machine. We can check for previous instances like mentioned. And another major thing, the command lines that you can run, which will help you, especially if it is a machine specific issue. Mostly installation issues are machine specific issues, unless if it is happening for bulk users, then it is based on the delivery mechanism. For example, if you have used Intune as a delivery mechanism and have been deploying for hundreds of users and the installation has paused, then we have to isolate both from Intune and Office standpoint. So if it is single user issue, then these are some of the command lines that you can run. So first is on command prompt as an administrator, that is on elevated command prompt. You can run dsregcmd online cleanup image restore help. So when you run this command, DISM uses Windows Update to provide the files that are required to fix corruption. So this is basically to ensure that if there are any system-based corruption or any file corruption, these command lines will help you fix that. And after you run that, you can run SFC scan now. The SFC scan now command will scan all the protected system files and replace the corrupted files with a cached copy. And that cached copy again is located in the compressed folder in Windows directory. So these are two commands that you can use. And most of the time, if it is one machine specific issue, using these commands, you will be able to resolve the issues very quickly if it is just machine specific issues, and given that there could be any corruptions in the files. So, and you have also isolated based on network and other isolation that we are talking about. So next step would be to collect ROI scan and ULS Verbose logs. In this specific scenario, for the fix that worked was, once we collected the logs, we were able to identify there was a specific registry And in that registry of current version, which you see here in HT local machine, there was a profile list which was missing, which is essential for installation to work. So as soon as we created this, the installation happened seamlessly. So again, this is for this specific scenario. After we collected the logs, after we isolated and collected the logs, we were able to identify. It might not be the same for every user. It could be different for different users because this is, again, a generic error. But yeah, these are some of the things that you can check, and some of these registries that you can go and check to see if this is already present or not. Moving on to the next scenario. Again, this screenshot shows that there could be a possible problem with the internet connection, or there could be a possibility that there is no enough space. So in this specific scenario, we checked the ULS Verbose logs, and in the logs, we were able to see that prerequisite check has failed. So these 5 pointers which are mentioned here in the slide are the prerequisites that we're talking about. That is the bitness. Like Krishna already mentioned, that 32 and 64-bit cannot coexist on the same machine. So if there is a previous product, let's say a Visio or project product of 32-bit, which was already installed on the machine, and you're trying to install Office Suite, again, click to run, but you're installing a 64-bit version. So because the Visio project could be 32-bit and you're trying to install 64, this issue can happen. So it's best that if you have a previous product which is of a particular bitness, to install the other Office Suite also of the same bitness. Next would be disk space. Yeah, because this might not always be the case. Most of the time this is not the case, but this is one of the prerequisites that we have to check. Next would be network cost, which we discussed upon, and admin context, if the user is logged in as standard user or as an admin, and to check any previous versions, either MSI is present before. Okay. So starting with the Office activation. So this is also one of the top call generators when it comes to Office issues. We get a lot of Office activation issues where users are either not able to activate Office, or they have been using Office, they have activated them, they've been using Office for quite some time, and suddenly they start to get these error messages that Office is not activated and they're not able to activate it. So before we start with the scenarios, I would just like to go through the workflow of how the activation works. So Office activation and sign-in go hand in hand, but are two different things. And if some of you have already attended the session on Identity Online, there were some of these aspects on authentication which could have been covered. So, so when it comes to activation, first thing is that user provides the Office credentials. That is, as soon as the Office is installed and you open any of the Office product, let's say Word, it gives you a prompt which asks you to activate. So that is when the first time when you're trying to activate, you give your username and password. So as soon as you enter these details are sent for authentication at the Office 365 portal, that is portal.office.com. So when it goes to portal.office.com, these details are again verified, and the subscription service checks if this user has the correct license that this user claims to have. So the license entitlement check is done, where the subscription service confirms if this user has the valid license. And once this subscription service confirms this, these users' licensing details is sent to something called Office Licensing Server. Now, because client being a standalone thing, it will not be able to communicate directly. So Office Licensing Server gives this information back to the client and telling that the license entitlement check is done. So now the Office Licensing Server, that is OLS, authorizes and registers this request. And once this is done, the Office activation is done and the user will be able to use the product seamlessly. So these are some of the Office activation scenarios that we come across. So Activation in managed environment, that is managed as in cloud-only domain, when the customer's environment is cloud-only domain. So when we were talking about understanding the customer's environment, these were some of the aspects, again, that we can consider. That is understanding if they have a managed environment or if they have a federated environment, that is federated as in they use ADFS, Active Directory Federation Services. And next thing would be shared computer activation, which we'll talk in detail about in the upcoming slides. So this is another kind of activation. The workflow is similar to activation, the normal activation, but the purpose of SCA is a little different from the normal activation. And again, SCA in persistent and non-persistent VDI environments. So coming to the key factors of Office activation issue. First thing would be Windows. We always check if the issue is build specific, profile specific, because we want to make sure that the Windows build or operating system is not one of the things that is causing an hindrance with the activation. And next would be network specific. Krishna was talking about filtering the URLs and the IPs. So for activation to work seamlessly, we need to ensure that all the Office 365 URLs and IPs are whitelisted on all the filtering devices that you might have, that the customers might have, and on firewalls, etc. So that is something that plays a role. And next is identifying if the issue is user specific. That is, when I mean user specific, that is, we have to check if the issue is happening with one specific user on one specific machine. It would be a good isolation to ask the user to check, to try to activate on another completely different machine, or try to activate on the same machine on another Windows profile, so that we can isolate if the issue is really user specific or if the issue is machine specific. And next would be browsers. So it is important that all the browsers are updated to the latest build. And it might not cause issues with the managed environment, but when it comes to federated environment, we need to ensure that the ADFS site is added to the trusted site of Office queue. And we have to also ensure that the installed queue, SQ, that is Office licensing SKU, matches with the assigned Office license. Moving on to shared computer activation. So like I mentioned, the workflow remains the same as the normal activation, but the purpose for shared computer activation is specifically for to ensure that multiple users will be able to use Office. And this is specifically, again, for remote desktop services when there is RDS server in place. So one best thing is that when Microsoft partners interact with the customers, they also help the customers with the deployment. So you will be working closely with the customers, and you will have a better understanding of their infrastructure, their operational requirements, their organizational requirements. So if you have any specific customers who are looking for options, and now being the pandemic situation, SCA is the best option, because more and more users are trying to use Office, their workspace, remotely. So we see that more and more users are trying to onboard on this method for activation. So you can be the best judge if understanding their infrastructure, if this is something that would suit their requirement. So SCA lets you deploy M365 apps to a computer, and this can be accessed by multiple users. So talking about some of the scenarios, first thing would be, let's say there are 3 workers who are working at a factory, and they share the same physical computer, and all 3 of them work 8-hour shifts, but their timings do not overlap. So they can use the same physical computer, and they can use SCA, shared computer activation, and as soon as they log into their profile, they will be able to see their workspace. So one good thing, major thing about shared computer activation is that, let's say that user A, there are, let's say there are two or three RDS servers in place, and user A logs in to RDS server 1 during morning hours of the day, and he logs in to his workspace, to his profile, and he works on specific files or saves a Word document, and then he logs out. And during the afternoon, the RDS 1 is not available. Multiple other users are using it, so he uses RDS 2, and he again logs in with his profile. Seamlessly, he will be able to access his workspace and access all the work that he was doing without having to save it separately on a network drive or having to send it, etc. So that is one major advantage of using shared computer activation. So there are some of the other listed scenarios here, like 15 nurses at a hospital use Office on 10 different computers throughout the day. So the permutations and combinations can be multiple, and it can be used in any scenario, and it can also be used. Let's say if there's a conference room or some public space in the company, and multiple users can use Office on that computer that's located over there. Okay, so another major advantage of shared computer activation is that when it comes to normal activation, if you have the license of Microsoft 365 apps, it will let you deploy Office only on 5 different PCs and 5 different mobile devices. But when it comes to shared computer activation, there is no limit as such for deployment. You can use shared computer activation to unlimited number of devices. Though there is no limit that has been declared, we see that sometimes the users face issues where the error message clearly shows that they have exhausted the number of connections. And in those scenarios, you can open the support ticket with Microsoft, and we can verify with our engineering team as to why is this happening. So some of the prerequisites for shared computer activation would be that in order to use shared computer activation, you would need an Office 365 plan that includes Microsoft 365 apps. So when it comes to normal activation, there is no such criteria on what kind of license. But when it comes to shared computer activation, only Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise and only E3 and E5 are supported. And in Microsoft 365 Business Premium plan, which includes Microsoft 365 apps for business, this is the only business plan that is supported. There are other business plans like Microsoft 365 Business Standard, which also include Microsoft 365 for business, but this plan is not supported for shared computer activation. So this is also one thing that we need to suggest to customers preemptively. If they are looking for options and they haven't bought the licenses yet, then it would be best to guide them that if this is something that they would be looking out for, so they can buy the licenses accordingly. And also one more thing that I forgot to mention was that shared computer activation will save you a lot of cost, and it's very efficient, and on operational level also it's very efficient. And next thing is that shared computer activation is not available for Office for Mac yet. So if the organization have a lot of users who are using Office for Mac specifically, then this would not be beneficial for them. Then the activation in SCA, like I said, it's similar to normal activation. But when I said that user A is logging into RDS1 at morning hours of the day and then logs in the afternoon to another workspace, as in to another server. So how is this seamlessly happening is because each of this user has a unique licensing token, which is stored in this specific location of local app data, Microsoft Office licensing folder. So every user, whoever creates a profile and has activated, for them, there is a unique licensing token which gets saved in this licensing folder. And this is the same token that is being roamed. So when it is being roamed, we initialize these attributes in the either in the registry hive while deploying Office, or what you can do is you can also initialize it on the group policy. There's a very nice article called Overview of Shared Computer Activation, which explains all these methods very clearly. The details of that also would be included in our handout that we'll share later. So again, just like normal activation, these tokens also needs to be renewed every 30 days, and it needs internet connection for that to happen. If that fails, that is when the SCA breaks, that is the activation breaks, flow breaks, and the users will start getting prompts that either they see a reduced functionality mode screen, or it simply asks for username and password to be able to use Office again. And SCA, the main advantage of SCA is that it's seamless. So for that, we need to ensure that the tokens getting renewed every 30 days, and there is active internet connection. Okay, so moving on towards the Office activation troubleshooting. Again, isolation plays a very key role when it comes to troubleshooting these. And first thing that we have to check is that users are signed with the right Office license. And best thing would be to always collect ROI scan. And when you collect the ROI scan, it will show you all the product keys that are installed. And if you see that there are multiple different product keys installed, and which might be from their previous versions that they were using, there is again a command line command called unp key, which you can use to be able to delete these previous product keys. You do not have I also wanted to mention that you do not have to make a note of these things, because we will ensure that all these details are consolidated for you to refer later. And then, we always check if the issue is based on a specific user or specific machine, and check from network specific standpoint. And when it comes to network, one of the logs that is always helpful is fiddler logs. So fiddler logs will help us understand what is going on when you start this activation process, or any of the other sign-in related tasks which are going on. This fiddler will capture all the requests that are coming, and also will give you the results based on what is happening in the background, so that you can check. And you can check based on the error codes and the status, as in how the requests are coming and how is it responding. And when it comes to activation, the other logs that we have to collect would be NULS logs. For installation, it is ULS, but for activation, it is NULS logs. And next thing would be to browse through this URL, ols.office apps live, and to check if you are able to see the metadata response, and if it is passing through successfully. And if you see that there are any specific error messages that are published on the metadata, then you can capture that, and you can relay it to the Microsoft support team to investigate. And one of the major thing that we have to always check is that Office updates and Windows updates are always on the latest, and there could be some of the updates which might have already fixed the issues if the customer is facing, and if it is a known issue that has been going on. So it would be best to have the Office updated to the latest build. And if the issue has impacted multiple users and everybody is on semi-annual channel, then you can try to shift them, change the channel to the monthly channel to see if that is making an impact. You don't have to do it at the same time for everybody. You can try to move one user to monthly and see if that is something that's resolving. So that is something that you can use as a workaround if it seems to be a known issue. Okay. Next thing would be to identify the machine state. So this is the command line that you can use, dsregcmd/status on command prompt as an administrator. And the screenshot that I have attached shows only the device state, as in if the machine is just domain joined, or if it is both domain joined and Azure AD joined, or if it is workplace joined, etc. But apart from this, you see a lot of other details as well. And that will also help us identify, for example, let's say that the users have both domain join as well as Azure AD join. And Azure Active Directory, PRT, that is refresh token, is something that is causing the issue. So when we run this command, we'll be able to see those details as well. That is, if the PRT is getting refreshed, if that is being issued or not. So this is also something potentially that you can collect while working on customer scenarios. Okay, so moving on to some of the activation issues that we come across day in, day out. So in this, one of the really common issues that we see is the unlicensed product error. So you see either a pink ribbon or a yellow ribbon where it shows that your Office suite is going to expire in so and so days. So this is when the Office is running on reduced functionality mode, where you can view and print, but you are not able to edit, etc. So in this specific scenario, we first went with the process. We checked if the user has the right license and the right SKU, which has been installed. And we identified that the user is able to activate the Office on another machine. So this issue turned out to be specific to one machine. So after it was isolated to be machine specific, we collected the NULS and process monitor logs. So some of the highlighters are shown in the screenshot at the right, where as to what we see in these logs. And yeah, we see that, the error shows that there is a trial notification bar which shows that after so and so days the Office is going to expire. So after perusing through these logs, we found that there is one specific registry key called Software Protection Platform, and that specific registry key in the HKey current user was missing permissions. And as soon as we created this specific key and we gave full permission to it, the issue was resolved instantly for this user. So coming to the next scenario. So here again, this shows that something went wrong, and then you are able to see the error code. So in this specific scenario as well, we identified that the issue was specific to this machine. When we check the fiddler, we see that, so this is how it looks when we collect the fiddler and when you view the file. So you will be able to see the request that is going, and you will see the HTTP status error code. So here it shows 401, that is unauthorized, and it also shows that, the method requires client ULS, but the client did not provide one. So here again, this also was identified to be machine specific. So we collected the fiddler, and there is another log called AD/WAM log that we collect when it comes to activation scenarios. When it comes to activation scenarios, we collect 3 logs simultaneously. That is in tandem. We enable NULS logging, we enable AD/WAM logging, and we start the fiddler, and we reproduce the issue and then stop all 3 logging, because we want to correlate based on the timestamp from all 3 logs when we are checking, so that we can see what is happening at what instance, so that we can match the pattern to be able to understand the root cause. So since due to the time constraint, we are not able to show you the demo of how we enable this, so we'll include those details as well. So after we collected these logs, we also found that there's first thing we found that there was a specific URL for Office activation to run, and that URL had to be added to the trusted site. We added that, and we moved the content from the specific yellow highlighted aspect you can see down here in the slide, that is users xxxx app data Microsoft.aad broker plugin. So we found out that this specific thing was corrupted. So we moved the content from this part and we moved it to desktop. And before starting this, we had also disconnected the device from Azure Active Directory. So after moving the content from this specific location to the desktop, we rejoined the machine to the Azure Active Directory, and the issue was resolved after that. So this is something that we took the route based on the log analysis for this specific scenario. It could be different for different users. For the same error, as in same screenshot of the error that you see, it might not be, the resolution might not be the same for all of them. So, but these are some things that you can check. Some of the basic things, like, you can check some of the basic things in the registry, like I mentioned, profile list for installation scenarios. So those parts you can go and check if they are present. Moving on to sign-in issues. So sign-in issues, again, when it comes to sign-in, it can be initiated using either the MSA account or O365 organizational ID. And we only support issues which are specific to O365 org IDs. And talking about different scenarios for sign-in issues, some of the generic errors again we get are we are unable to connect right now, please check network, or we get like a blank sign-in window when you're trying to sign into Office. So when we are isolating, we can check if the issue is specifically with either OneDrive for Business or SharePoint Online Services. And then we can check if the admin has configured something called sign-in options. So talking about sign-in options, so this is specifically configured by the admin to restrict the users from using multiple accounts to sign into or activate Office Suite. So some of the organizations configure it so that they can restrict the users from using any guest accounts to sign into, as in to activate on their machines. Maybe due to some of the compliance reasons or organizational reasons, they might have set it. So let's say that the users have multiple different accounts and their sign-in now options is set to an option such that only their O365 org IDs are allowed to sign in. Then we'll have to check with them, with the customer, with their administrator, if this is something that has been purposely done, or if it is okay, then we can set the sign-in options to 0. When it is set to 0, that means both org IDs and guest accounts, etc., are allowed. And next is, always to ensure that Windows and Office are up to date. And we can also check if there are any specific conditional access policies or any tenant-wide conditional access policies set on SharePoint Online, which might also be which might also impact Office sign-in. And just like for activation, we collect Fiddler and NULS for further investigation for sign-in issues as well. Okay. So coming to some of the basic prerequisites for activation scenarios. First thing would be federated. When it comes to federated environment, we know that there is ADFS in place. So when there's ADFS in place, single sign-on should be enabled. It's mandatory. And Office 365 portal sign-on behavior also should be seamless. WIA, that is Windows Integrated Authentication, should be enabled on the browser. And we need to ensure that SMTP and UPN of the users should match. Maybe sometimes they have a different SMTP and a different UPN, but when it comes to federated environment, both of these should match. Coming towards SCA persistent and non-persistent. Persistent and non-persistent specifically with regard to VDI, that is virtual desktop infrastructures. So coming towards the differences between persistent and non-persistent, to put it in a very simple manner, non-persistent would be where there would be one parent image and multiple clone images. And persistent would be almost similar like owning a laptop. But in non-persistent VDI, there could be some limitations. For example, let's say you have a persistent environment and you have some of the thick client applications like Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, etc. And you've been using those, and you have created certain layers, etc. And you have saved those settings. And if you log out and log back in, all these settings and cache and cookies will be saved. It will not get reset. But when it comes to non-persistent, if you have such thick clients and you are making these changes, none of these changes will be saved. So all the cookies, cache, they get reset. The basic settings like bookmarks, etc., that will be saved in non-persistent, but some of the other changes, like I mentioned, will not be saved. But most of the times we get customer scenarios with non-persistent VDI environments itself. It's very rare that we get persistent, and non-persistent has a lot of advantages as well over persistent when it comes to cost and optimization, etc. So most users use non-persistent, and the SCA will not differ a lot for these two environments. It is almost the same, and RDS is required regardless of the environment. And when it comes to persistent, SCA key must be enabled while deploying Office. It is not the mandate for non-persistent. And when I say SCA must be enabled, that is when Krishna was showing the config.office.com and how to set the values. He spoke about shared computer activation as well and how to enable it. So when you're using for persistent, you have to ensure that it in the configuration file itself, you have set it, and the XML has SCA value as 1. So again, SCA works with Office Pro Plus licensing model, and for that is for M365 apps for enterprise, and under business plan, it can be used for business premium. So when it comes to non-persistent shared computer activation, that is where we use a token roaming system. That is the licensing tokens are saved at a specific location, and in order to roam these tokens, there are two specific registries. That is SCL cache override, which is set to 1, and SCL cache override directory. This is where you have to put the path where you are roaming the tokens. For example, I showed in one of the previous slides where in local app data licensing folder, we had saved where we saved the tokens. So that path can be given it has to be given in the SCL cache override directory. It can be different as well. You can save it on some other location, but any path where you save the tokens, that path should be initialized in the SCL cache override directory. This can either be done in the registry or registry editor, or it can be done in the group policy. So when it comes to troubleshooting these scenarios, we have to ensure that the token stands valid for 30 days. Sometimes we see issues where after every 30 days, or let's say after every 90 days, shared computer activation breaks, as in they either get an error or it simply asks for username and password again, which it is not supposed to. So there could be many different reasons why it could happen. If the pattern is consistent, that is, it is happening every 60 days or every 90 days period, then one good thing to check would be based on their environment. That is, if they have also, if their machine state is also that they have Azure AD join machines and domain join, then we can, there is one specific thing that we can check is if they have any Azure AD policies where they have configured token lifetime for example, for password to get expired. So if something like such policies have been configured on Azure AD level, so that can impact the client. So we see a lot of issues where some of these policies play a factor when it comes to shared computer activation. So it would be good to ask the customers if they have any such policies in place. And most of the times customers might also not be aware of what kind of policies the admin has configured. So that in those scenarios, we have to isolate and get to the root cause. And yeah, reduced functionality mode is when Office, when it shows that, user is not assigned with the Office license, though it has the right license. And some of the other common scenario is when it comes to non-persistent environment, there could be conflict due to roaming profiles as well as configuring SEL cache override. So roaming profiles is different from roaming the token. When we are roaming the tokens, we are initializing these tokens to be saved at a particular path, and we are roaming these tokens. When we are using roaming profiles, that is when they are either using the standard method or they are using some other third-party services, the customers, in order to roam these profiles itself. Both of them are supported, but we need to ensure that when you are using, especially when you're going through the shared computer activation methods, what Microsoft has published, based on that, if your environment has the infrastructure which will match to that, or you can explore different options based on how you want it to be implemented as well. And next other important thing is that this specific keys that I was talking about, SEL cache override and SEL cache override directory, they have to be either configured manually, that is while creating the XML, or by GPO. That is either manually or by registry editor or by GPO. It cannot be both, because if you configure both, then the client will get confused as to which is the one that it has to pick, and it won't be able to prioritize, and then it will just give errors. So it always has to be one of these, and it can never be both. And again, with SCA also, the logs to collect would remain the same: Fiddler, NULS, and AED-WAM. And yeah, that's it for shared computer activation. So coming to the Office updates, talking about the mode of updates, it can either be automatic updates or GPO based or SCCM. So when mostly in the large organizations, we see that they either have SCCM in place or they are using group policy for controlling the updates, because they want to have more control on how the updates are run, etc. So update channels, there are three different, that is current channel, we have monthly enterprise channel, and we have semi-annual enterprise channel. So when it comes to current channel, it provides users with the newest Office features as soon as they're ready. And current channel usually receives new features at least once a month, but there is no set schedule for when those updates are going to be released. And current channel also receives other updates during the month, which will also include security and non-security updates. And there is no set schedule for these updates, but in general, there are 2 or 3 releases each month, including one on the second Tuesday of every month. And for monthly channel, if you want to provide your users with the new Office features each month, but only want to receive updates per month on a predictable release schedule, then you can use monthly channel. And updates to monthly enterprise channel are released on the second Tuesday of the month. And this monthly update can include feature, security, and non-security updates. When it comes to semi-annual channel is one of the most robust channel, because what happens is any sort of updates, let's say if there are any bugs identified, or if there were known issues which happened in the course of months, and they have identified those things, and all those fixes will be available in the semi-annual channel. So sometimes what happens is that this is something that we see a lot when it comes to updates, that after running a specific update, the Office will not function as expected. You will either see like Office crashing, or you might see multiple other issues that start occurring. So most of the times, it's not entirely due to Office issue. That is, the root cause might not be due to Office itself, that is an Office update. It might be because there are, if the customers are using multiple other different softwares, security softwares, or let's say any third-party federation broker or services, or any other softwares, be it. And those specific softwares might, if they are not compatible with these latest Office update, and if that collides, then either Office will start seeing issues if Office gets impacted. So for that sake, it's again important to isolate, and if something has been going on a grander scale, we will be able to check with our engineering to see if it is a known issue. And if we know that if it has only impacted monthly channel, because monthly receives updates very frequently, and so does current channel. And we know that semi-annual has not been impacted, so we can, as a workaround for that specific time to mitigate what is happening, we can try to change the channel to semi-annual, etc., or vice versa, like based on whichever suits the best for the customers. So again, semi-annual channel receives updates every 6 months, the feature updates, and it happens in Jan and July. Semi-annual targeted receives updates during March and September of the year. So when it comes to troubleshooting, we have to check the mode of updates. We have to check what kind of mode they are using, if it's automatic, GPO based, or SCCM based. And then we have to check the update tasks in the ROI scan, where we were able to see that, in ROI scan, it shows different task states. So we can check if that's failing or that is going through. And we have to isolate based on machine. And for updates as well, like installation, we collect ULS Verbose logs. Okay. So yeah, that was it for today. Thank you everybody for attending this session. I hope, me and Krishna, we hope, and everybody from Microsoft, we hope that the session was useful to all of y'all. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you with regard to any questions that you might have.